Hi, I'm Jessica Barnett, Director of Product Management here at ISACA. I am so thrilled to be here today with our special guest, Mark Thomas, for so many reasons. First of all, being here live and in person in this crazy time, it's just nice to get back to some sense of normalcy and be here with you. Mark and I go way, way back, and we're going to be talking to you about some fun stories and more ISACA things. But before we get started, Mark, could you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself, how you got started?
Sure, be happy to. Mark Thomas, actually interesting. I spent the first half of my life, half of my career in the United States Army, and didn't even think I was going to be in IT. It was kind of an interesting story. I'll be able to tell you that in a little bit. But I live in Phoenix, Arizona. I have my own consulting firm. It's just me, and I've been working with ISACA for several years. 2008, I believe, is when I started working with ISACA. Really got deep into a lot of the frameworks, COBIT, CGUIT, C-RISC, and CDIPSI. So been a real fan of the training, of all the products, and especially of the association. So it's always nice to visit the headquarters building and see folks. I kind of laugh because a couple weeks ago I did a live course for a client, and it was kind of strange because I actually had to go in with pants and couldn't wear shorts. You're talking about changes.
I hear you.
I know.
First day I think I'm wearing pants and shoes. So
That's right.
Oh. So how did you get started in the industry?
Yeah, interesting. So, like I mentioned, I was in the military. I had no desire to be IT at all, anything like that. An old colleague of mine reached out and said, "Hey, are you interested in getting out? Because I have a role that I think you'd be interested in." It was a PMO role, project management organization in a company. So I went out and did some research. This is in 1997, right? And so did some research, and I found this framework called the PMBOK. And I fell in love, and I took this role. And this is really what got me into being kind of a framework freak, because it was really neat, because now I had something to use to help me build, to build an organization. So I wasn't in IT at this point, though. I was a PMO for the business. And I'm going to get to how I got into IT. It's kind of a long story, but it's a good one. So because I didn't work for IT, I worked for the business. I complained about IT all the time. I was their biggest critic. And so we were at an executive retreat in California. The chief operating officer came up and said, "Man, you're giving IT a really hard time." I said, "Exactly, here's why." I named off all the reasons why IT was just in a miserable state. And he said, "Well, congratulations, when you get back home on Monday, you're now the North American director of IT."
Oh dear.
That's how I got into IT,
and
I couldn't get out from that point.
Yeah.
So kind of a good story there.
Oh my gosh, that's exciting. One of the things that I don't know a lot about, even though we have worked together, it's been over a decade, if you can believe it. It's been crazy. How did you initially get engaged with ISACA? Like, what drew you to ISACA?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'd been working for larger consulting firms, was CIO of an organization, and I got really deep into COBIT. This was around COBIT 4. I was an ISACA member, and ISACA had a COBIT class that was getting ready to take place, that the instructor fell ill and couldn't teach the class. And ISACA said, "Hey, do you think you know COBIT well enough to teach it?" This is before the accreditation, the certification.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, "Well, sure, let me give this a shot." And it turned out pretty well. That was 2008. And so that was the first time I ever worked with ISACA from a training perspective. But I fell in love with the framework, with COBIT, and wanted to do more from a volunteer perspective. And that's how I really started to get into more of the kind of the framework and the certifications. And I kind of became a certification junkie, if you will. As going from COBIT, it naturally for me in my career, CGUIT was a great move, and I remember you and I having the discussion about C-RISC.
Yep.
And I went through the whole process of preparing and taking the exam, and that was based on a discussion where I remember you were saying that there's a drive for C-RISC, and it complemented what I did with CGUIT. So that was really neat. That got me into C-RISC, and then naturally, then we have privacy and CDIPSI come up after that, and I can't say no.
Yeah.
I have to do it.
So
that's kind of a quick rundown. And so it's been a really fun ride, and it's been I've met some awesome friends and colleagues with ISACA, and have no intentions of ever going away.
That's awesome. That's good to hear, because we always talk about wanting to clone you anyways, so it's good to hear. I know I'm kind of jumping the gun a little bit, but let's talk about, since we're on the subject of training and accreditation, not only, again, is Mark an esteemed member and an accredited trainer and a subject matter expert, but also an APMG assessor. So tell us a little bit about, that process, and also just the overall importance of accreditation.
Yeah, I think the accreditation that we do with the trainers at ISACA is top notch. And because as a trainer, I don't want to hear a client say, well, we had somebody else teach this class and they did a horrible job. And so it really is a way for us to vet, to make sure that people really do understand, not only they understand the industry, but they understand the framework. Because when you're in class, you're trying to transfer knowledge, but you're also preparing somebody for an exam, and it's a stressful environment. So the accreditation, I think, is really interesting. We all have to do it, right? Every one of us do, because it just makes sure that we are up to date and up to speed on the latest changes in the frameworks. Because at ISACA, of course, we refresh our certifications on a regular basis. So you have to stay on top of those pieces. So for new trainers, it was a great move for ISACA and APMG from an accreditation standpoint. So what I do is I'm a product knowledge assessor. So for anybody who trains C-Guide, C-Risk, or CDIPSI, the chances are pretty good that I may have had a conversation with them, really asking about their knowledge of the, of the domains, applicability, and so on. So yeah, it's kind of a neat combination, because now we know that we really have good folks in front of clients.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, it's about the candidate experience, right?
Yeah.
We want people to be successful.
Yeah.
So.
And you think about it, we had these conversations 10 years ago.
I know.
Saying, all right, we need to move into it. I remember when we first started saying, okay, what are the core competencies and skills we look at for trainers? And it's been really cool to watch the evolution from somebody calling me saying, hey, can you stand in on this COVID course? You don't have to be accredited, just go teach the course. To now, there is a vetting process that goes through it.
Absolutely. And I know it was a lot of change management going through the process. Remember all the conversations we'd have with different individuals to help them understand the importance. But I think that, with your help, we've pretty much gotten there. And it's,
I think so.
An exciting,
thank you.
Exciting
Glad
time.
to do it.
So what is the most important thing you've learned in your professional career, and what was your life like before it?
So in my professional career, I think one of the key things, I had this discussion with my son not too long ago, and I said, do something that you really like. And of course that sounds cliche, but what I said would really not only made sense to him, but it helped me reconfirm that I did the right thing. I said, don't major in minors. And so I think what happened to me early in my career as a consultant, I could do anything. I was an expert at everything. And so I had a very broad brush, but I wasn't an expert in one or two things. And when I finally had a passion around IT governance, compliance, and risk, what I found out was I really became an expert at that. And so all the other things will happen, but I really wanted to be razor sharp at that. And I think the other piece that's really important that I've learned on this is not only do you do what you like to do, but when you're trying to get into your career, what do you want to be as opposed to what do you want to do? Because I knew I wanted to be an expert. I had no clue I was going to be an expert in IT governance, but I may have to do certain things before that to get to that point. And I think that's one of the things I think from a career perspective, being a part of the association has been very helpful, because it's helped me focus and really, quite frankly, enjoy IT governance. People say, man, IT governance.
I know,
right?
you make it sound
How do you
sexy,
enjoy
right?
this stuff?
Like when we talk about it, I'm like, talk to me about it forever,
Yeah,
because you make it sound so relevant.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
Exciting.
I think passion, having a passion for it. I think that's a pretty key thing. Yeah.
Well, and you've used the word passion several times, and I can tell you that's what makes you also an outstanding trainer, is your passion. You get in front of the class and you make people excited about what you're talking about, no matter the subject matter. So Mark, what do you wish your younger self knew about your current profession? And additionally, what advice would you tell the next generation of security leaders?
Well, I think getting into the industry, you think I'm going to get trained, I'm going to understand what I'm doing for a living, and then that's what I'm going to do. And I think once I found out that this is very dynamic, this changes by the day. And so I wish I'd have understood that I should have really broadened a lot of my knowledge in a lot of other areas because I wanted to be that expert, but I also think it's important to really broaden it out and understand certain parts around risk, around audit, and those types of things. I really wish I would have looked at that piece first. The other thing on this is I think that if I were to provide any advice for everybody, I know we've talked about training, but I think that's absolutely key because staying on top with your credentials, staying on top of any course, and it doesn't have to be an ISACA course, but of course in this industry, you know, a lot of the training and certifications we have are top-notch certifications. So I kind of summarize it like that: is always stay on top of what's taking place, and an association like this is a great place to do it. Join an association when you're young in your career. I joined late in my career and wish that I'd have been part of this a lot earlier. It could have really helped me quite a bit. And get your certifications and stay on top of those certifications. It's absolutely key.
Yeah, that's important. What's a commonly held belief about your role that you passionately disagree with?
A bunch, but I'll tell you what, I'm teasing.
We only have time for one today. That's a whole nother discussion.
So it's so funny, and Jess, you know that I travel a lot. In fact, just a little fact: in 2019, I was on the road over 40 weeks. Visited over 13 countries and 18 U.S. states. That was in 1 year. And I always get comments from friends and other folks saying, wow, you get to travel around the world. It must be a glamorous life. Okay? Well, when I post on social media, I'm not posting that I'm up at 3:30 prepping for a course, or that I just got to the airport because of a delayed flight at 2 a.m. and I have to be live at 8 a.m. Right? So people think that, oh, it's glamorous, you get to see all these things, but the things you see on social media are the fun things that I'm doing. So I would disagree with the fact that traveling that much is not as glamorous as a lot of people think. I love it, don't get me wrong, but I think that's one that I would disagree with.
Oh my gosh, and I think it's a running joke here sometime. It's like, what time zone is Mark Thomas in now? What's he in today?
When I set up assessment calls for the APMG assessment, you know, we're assessing people around the world, and it's interesting when I put together my availability times. They're different. So this week I may be in Arizona and in Chicago. Next week I may be in London. So I'm trying to put those times together. It's always fun.
But I can say, no matter where you were at in the world, I remember when I was part of the enterprise team and we were working on client engagements together, you would always make time to talk to the customer before the class. You would always make time, which was always much appreciated.
Yeah, we had a good groove going on when we were talking. We did. You know, it was really kind of neat the way we set that system up, and I think it was really helpful for you know, folks coming to enterprise training with ISACA to actually hear from the instructor before the class, right? And be able to really talk about some of their concerns and why they're going through training. Yeah. And it's really helpful. And I think we had that one down pretty well.
Oh my gosh, we did. And I think that is one of the most outstanding things from my perspective about ISACA are all of the passionate and incredibly intelligent professionals. So to be able to tap into that pool so we can really help our customers get to where they want to go, and our members, it's just awesome.
Actually, do you remember what we used to call it when we
used to
teamed
call
up?
it shake and bake. Shake
That's
and bake, buddy. Oh my gosh.
That's fun.
That was fun.
But you know what? We did spend a lot of weekends and a lot of late nights working to get there.
Oh yeah, we did. Oh yeah, we did. And a lot of travel, but it was always fun. Always fun with you. So Mark, what is the biggest challenge the industry is facing today from your opinion? And what opinions do you have to make it better?
So I get the opportunity to visit a lot of organizations in a given month. And categorically, I can tell you that internally for organizations, they're still trying to fight through silos. I have been in organizations where, take risk registers, for example. One organization literally had 6 different risk registers in 6 different parts of the same organization. And they refused to talk to each other. And so I think that is a systemic problem that a lot of organizations have, and which goes back to my expertise, governance. And people always like to say, well, governance, that's about rules. Governance slows things down. Actually, not today. Right? Governance, you know, the principles of governance haven't changed, but really governance is about how we're communicating, how we're being transparent, how are we delegating the authority levels down to the most actionable part of the organization. I think that will really help a lot with some of the silos. You see it all the time. And I think that's probably one of the biggest issues that I run into doing client work and even doing training. I've had folks in class literally ask me which one of us should be the accountable person for this process.
Oh my gosh, they're getting down to that level.
Getting to that level because there's two different parts of the organization that are arguing about these things, and with good governance in place, they wouldn't even have to ask me that question.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? But which is okay, right? And I can give them advice on it. We can actually, link this back to the training course, right? So I think that's probably one of the biggest issues that I see.
That's interesting. Do you still have, I remember you used to have this really cool governance playbook that you would put together that you would share with clients.
Yeah.
Do you still leverage that?
I do. In fact, it was largely based on the COVID framework, and it was kind of putting it into English for us, because a lot of people, when you look at a framework or anything like that, you can't just pick up the framework book and read through it on an airplane trip and say, aha, I get it now, right? It's tough to do. So I tried to boil it down. In fact, I used a lot of what we called in COVID 5, we called them the enablers. Remember that? And I base it off of what we call the components now. So so I do actually share that with consulting clients to kind of help give them a head start. And I think some of the modifications and improvements we did with COVID 2019, which being a tailorable model now, I think really solved a lot of the concerns we had there. So I'm glad we got those changes in with the latest COVID.
Yeah. Well, that's exciting. If you had an extra $1 million of budget, how would you spend it? And why?
The first thing I would do is give everybody in this room a raise right off the bat, and that would probably take about 15 or $20 out of my budget. I'm teasing. No, actually, if I had that amount of budget, I think I would like to create a brand new home studio like you have here, because things are changing, right? And if you think about what, like I mentioned to you before, 2019, I was on the road all the time. In 2020, I was in one state, one place all year, right? And everything went online. Everything, and a lot of organizations.
Such a culture shock.
Yeah, it really was. And I've always just envisioned of having a state-of-the-art studio in my home where it's like being there. It's like being on stage. It's like doing that. That's probably where I'd put some of my money. And I probably would buy me a new fishing boat.
Oh, there you go. And a yurt, maybe?
A yurt. Yeah, that's right. You've actually seen me publish from a yurt in the mountains in northern Arizona.
I think that was a first. But yep. That's so funny. So let's talk a little bit about, because again, we've been working with each other for over a decade now. So fondest memory. You might remember when we were doing recordings for COVID. This was back in COVID 5. Oh, so you're going to take mine.
Oh, was that really?
That's okay. Keep going.
So I remember, so I had to stare at the camera. I couldn't stare anywhere else. But when we were recording, there was a lot of movement and a lot of graphics that were being put on the video. So I remember you standing in the back behind the camera. I couldn't look at you, but you would put your arms in certain places, and I would mirror what you were doing because there was going to be a bubble come up on the screen or something like that. And we did that for several days.
Several takes, because it's not only mirroring, but you're having to mirror, like, I'm stage right, it's your stage left.
Exactly.
It's like point, click, hold something up.
And I remember,
we were laughing so hard. I think we had to do like 100 different takes the first
and at
day.
The end of the day, we were both so tired because it's like you were live the whole time. That's probably one of my fondest memories. And of course, a lot of the work we did to put together a lot of the training around COVID 2019. There was a lot of work we put in.
COVID 2019.
Yeah, both.
The bridge. We had some really fun large client engagements that we worked together on. One of them was ISACA's largest at the time, which was awesome.
Yeah, that's right, because you and I did a lot of traveling for that one, and that was a big project.
Deal.
Yeah, that was cool. I remember that one. Yeah.
So a lot of fun times there. Oh my gosh, we could probably do a whole podcast on
we
fun
probably
stories.
Could just on those stories.
And stories that we shouldn't be talking about.
Some of them we shouldn't tell, but somebody in ISACA knows about it. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, exactly. So, Mark, you have your own business. What has that been like within the industry? And can you tell me something about your business that you do for a client that you didn't expect?
Oh, yeah, sure, yeah. But being a one-person company is good and bad, right? And I talked a little bit about having balance and do what you love to do. I love what I do, but I think one of the important things is you have to take some time off.
Yeah.
And I do that, and you know that.
Yes.
And so the old joke that when Mark is fishing, don't try to call
Yeah.
him because I'm not going to be answering the phone. But I think with a one-person company, one of the things that I had to do is look at the risks. What are the risks to my company? And I think that was really helpful because I actually used a lot of the C-risk content to say, okay, what are those things that could happen to the organization? And that's when I really started taking a look at how I can start to do more recordings, more of those types of things, because, again, if it's just me, I don't make a living unless I'm standing in front of somebody doing it. So I think that was kind of a key thing from that perspective. I think one of the projects that I was on, this was with a very large a phone company. They asked me actually to design a new offshoot company, and so I'd never thought I'd be part of an organization that built a virtual leadership team, and we actually designed an entire new mobile phone company, and I was the virtual CIO of the company. The company we designed never went to market, but it was really kind of a neat experience. I never expected to design and build a startup mobile phone company for a client. So,
and you were 100% remotely doing
absolute,
this.
all remote, and we were building the company all remote as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you really did have to pivot once the pandemic hit because of, you were doing everything live.
Absolutely.
How was that transition for you?
It was actually, to be quite frank, I was prepared for it because I'd thought about the risks. In fact, one of the big risk scenarios for my company was, what if another 9/11 style event happens and travel stops? And I didn't know it was a pandemic. I didn't know if it was going to, what it was going to be. But I did invest a significant amount of money into recording information, cameras, and those kinds of things, to kind of be ready for it. So it was a tough transition going into not leaving the same place, but working for multiple clients. And the transition coming back out is a little bit easier than I expected. I thought I was going to get lazy and say, you know what, I just want to sit at home. But it's nice to get out and do this stuff. So I think from a small business perspective, using a lot of the stuff that we talk about in our own frameworks was very helpful for me to survive through the pandemic.
Yeah, that's outstanding. That's outstanding. Now, before we kind of wrap up, how can listeners get in touch with you?
Sure. I'm pretty active on social media. You can find me on LinkedIn. There are a lot of Mark Thomases out there. It's probably best to use my email address. You mentioned my company name, Scout. It's mark@scout.com. I'm also on Twitter. It's Scout1 on Twitter. So I do repost a lot of information, a lot of things from ISACA perspective. I don't use my social media for sales. It's to transfer knowledge. It's to share information from a networking perspective. Yeah.
Well, that's exciting. That's very good. So final question. If in 150 years science fails to save us all, and that all is left is a book about life, about your life specifically, what would the title be?
A title about me if everything goes down. All right. I would say that title would be Loved What He Did, Worked Hard, Didn't Answer the Phone while he was fishing.
All right. ... Passionate to a fault.
You got it. That's
exclamation point.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure as always.
Yeah, it's always so nice to get out and visit old friends, because I know we've all had to be in different places and locked in at home, but this is really nice. It's always great to get back to the ISACA headquarters and really meet everybody again. It's really fun. So thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you. And thank you for listening to this ISACA podcast. I'm Jessica Barnett.